Hello, and welcome to the Omega Glory. What?
Yeah, why is it called that?
The planet's called Omega. Why is the planet called Omega? Who can say? I guess Omega's at the end of the alphabet, and this is a post-apocalyptic story.
Those two things don't go together.
Well, Omega and apocalypse and
Z is at the end of the alphabet. Alright, whatever.
World War Z, also about the apocalypse.
But that's about zombies.
And glory, like Old Glory. It's the flag.
Flag, right. This was the America episode of Star Trek. Kirk and the gang land on a planet that looks a lot like Earth, but isn't. And they find, like, nobody has bodies, they just have salt-looking things and costumes. And then they go down to the planet to, like, see what's going on, and there's this captain there that's angry and says, you know, we have to shoot these savages, their words. And they're like, but that violates the Prime Directive, and we never violate the Prime Directive.
Even when the safety of our crew is at stake.
I think they, like, didn't even really talk about the Prime Directive that much until this episode, and they always violate the Prime Directive in every episode, but they claim that they've never done this before. Which, whatever. It's so not true. They even violate it within this episode, and they're like, but when we violate it, it's okay, because we're cool.
It doesn't count as interference when it's right, is basically Kirk's legal position here.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
As always, really.
And so then there's this idea that maybe these people on this planet know how to live forever, which is, like, pretty cool. And I like the concept of, like, maybe the Prime Directive has, like, some good points, but maybe it's also just, like, this ideology that isn't very practical in outer space, but, like, seems like a good idea. And, like, would you violate the Prime Directive if it meant that you could help humanity live forever? And is that a good goal? And that's, like, a really interesting idea. And at first I was like, this is kind of a good Star Trek episode, because that's, like, definitely something that makes you think, and you go, wow, neat. I don't know. Maybe that would be good. Like, would it be good to introduce this entire society to, like, war and guns if you could then make the rest of the universe live forever? Is living forever really the best thing? I don't know. Probably is my answer, but, like, I'm not so sure. Like, I think immortality is good, but I've never experienced it. So, I don't know. And, like, war is pretty bad, so I don't know. It's a good question, right? You think maybe this is a good Star Trek, right? No, it's not, because then they run into the savages, and, like, I don't know, the savages. So there's some like the people who are not the savages. What are they called?
Calms.
The calms.
Which is short, as we learn in the end, for communist.
For communist, right. So it's basically, I don't know, so they're all sort of vaguely Asian, and then Asiatic, is that what they say?
Asiatic.
Asiatic. I don't know what, there's some,
which
like,
is a term that's fallen out of favor somewhat.
I don't know. It seems sort of vaguely racist, but then they start talking about the savages as being Native Americans, and you're like, what is going on? And then they bring in communism, and you're like, what? Where did communism come from? Why are we talking about communism?
Okay, I feel like I understood this episode a lot more.
I don't understand what's going on in this episode. There's, like, Native Americans, communism, living forever, the flag, freedom, Pledge of Allegiance, America, Prime Directive, sex. Like, what? This episode does not make any sense. I'm gonna get coffee, and Aaron will explain it.
Alright, so I haven't read anything about this episode, but I feel like I get what's going on in it. So we have this initial like you said, conventional Star Trek opener. There's a mystery. There's posing an ethical dilemma. But then the ethical dilemma gets tossed aside for what the episode wants to deal with next in what's called on TV tropes a debate and switch, when you pose a debate but you don't actually want to resolve it, so you just kind of reveal that the premise of it was invalid in this case. In this case, they don't actually have the ability to export the immortality because it's just a result of millennia of natural selection, which doesn't actually make too much sense because you could still study the immortal people and learn their secrets since they seem to be physiologically identical to humans. Part of it is to set up this whole idea of the civilized people and the savages, and they're trying to and the idea here is to acknowledge and subvert that trope by having the civilized people be non-white and the non-civilized people be white, which is supposed to blow the minds of the white audience watching it, and probably did, and then B, reveal that these are actually the remnants of an alternate universe version of Earth history, and the savages are only savages because of their history. Nothing about them is inherently savage. They're not an inherently savage race. They're just it's just that they were forced into this low-tech existence because there is this terrible biological warfare that happened instead of a nuclear war, but for the same reason, in that there was there was a global conflict between the communists and the Yankees, and
But why have they imported American?
this is part of the same kind of mystery in Star Trek that they put in for plot convenience, and that is never, as far as I know, explained, which is that they are occasionally coming across planets that are Earth, but something happened differently at some point around the 20th century. So it's the same thing as Miri, that was Earth up until the zombie apocalypse. This is Earth. This is Omega, which was Earth until they developed biological weapons instead of nuclear weapons, which caused the war to actually happen and for the communists to win. So
which communists? When has this ever happened?
This is the communists. Okay,
This
as
is
a
just like
global
the pretend 90s communists?
This is the way communists were depicted in U.S. propaganda. So they're like they're Asians but dressed in vaguely Russian clothing because they're all one unified group, and we're pretending that those were rival empires.
Okay, whatever.
So we've got this subversion, and then the plot twist that these seeming savages do actually speak English, like all aliens, but have chosen not to. So great is their hatred for the comms, and
Why do the communists speak English?
because everybody speaks English there.
But
Everybody.
aliens.
Everybody not only speaks English, but they're horrified by the fact that Spock has pointy ears and doesn't have a heartbeat in the right place. So, everybody on this planet is physiologically human.
I'm pretty sure the people in Star Trek just have no idea what an alien is.
Yes.
Even a 5-year-old would question these things. Who are the writers of Star Trek? Can you please get in touch with me? I have so many questions for you. Please.
They just in many episodes they just don't give a shit. They're just like aliens are like humans.
Okay, but if they just don't want to give a shit, then do really then it should be really message driven. It should be
it is. They had
why is this the message? What kind of message is this? Flag.
I'm getting there.
All right, get there.
I'm getting
there.
Yeah.
Get there with the America.
Message one, stop thinking in terms of fundamentally savage races. There are totally savage people, but it's just because of their history, and they just need to be civilized and enlightened by the people who happen to be who happen to have a more evolved culture because of environments more conducive to that.
I guess that's like a semi-decent message. Like, there are problems in that, but it could be worse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then message 2, look at what's gone wrong with the Yangs. They recognize freedom as a sacred word,
but they don't
know what it means. They recognize the flag and as a sacred thing. They recognize all of these writings as sacred things, but they think there's something they're just magic words for the priests to recite and a way of showing who's in the in-group and who's in the out-group.
Okay.
But they've completely lost the ideals that they represent.
That is a good message. I get behind that.
Mm-hmm.
But then we're not actually doing that. Like, they're just glancing at the flag and being like, the flag. Flaggy flag.
Well, that's what Kirk's ending speech is supposed to be about. Is him saying, you've lost the inclusive and populist and welfare promoting sense of all of this stuff, and you need to get it back. Good luck with that. Goodbye.
But then he's like, the original words were written for everyone, and it's like, no, they weren't. They were written for a very set of people.
If you want to get technical, the original words before they made them take out the bit about abolishing slavery.
Yeah. But there was never any women involved. Like, there were no, you know what I mean? Like, this was not for everyone. You know what I mean? And then the fact that Kirk is like, there have been other civilizations that have written similar good things, but none are as good as ours. Like, that's the antithesis. That's...
So other notes, the immortality versus prime directive thing would later be turned into one of the Star Trek movies.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Which movie is that?
Star Trek Insurrection, and the starship captain who, like, starts off as seeming like a rational extremist who just has a legitimate difference of opinion from Kirk, and then as soon as they figure out, with him in the other room, that he's actually made a false assumption and they're not going to be able to export immortality, then the next time we see him, he now is sweaty and wild-eyed, and we're now supposed to think of him as a madman, just because of this factual error that he's made. Like, that's definitely like a scene in the script where two different plot lines are stitched together. So Kirk is trying to figure it out, and he can't. And so then he suggests, why don't we solve this via trial by combat instead? Because that's really more of Kirk's wheelhouse, isn't it?
Aaron totally predicted
I called
that.
it, yeah.
Like, he was like, just said it like way before it happened, and then boom. It was...
It's just, Kirk knows this is how it's going to end. Like, there might be moments when he uses his brain, but in the end it has to come down to brute force, even when even when that doesn't make any sense, because he's like battling a giant lizard man or a genetically engineered super being with 10 times his strength.
Also, Spock was able to control a lady with his mind by suggesting things to her, and I was like, that's pretty bad. Like, that's pretty, like, whoa. Vulcans are sneaky and, like, potentially really evil, like, if they don't use their powers well. I guess they have done that in another episode, maybe, but, like, not that many. You'd think with that kind of power, that could have solved, like, half of the problems that happen in this episode.
Yeah, Spock's ability to manipulate people definitely fluctuates.
Yeah, ebbs and flows there.
Seems to be stronger on women than on men, I feel like.
Well, I mean, is that a big surprise for Star Trek? No.
Tune in next week for something about a computer. The ultimate computer, maybe?
You'll find out. It'll be a surprise.
True. Like, most of the time, Star Trek is very associated with the cluster of liberal, libertarian, blue state attitudes
Those words didn't go together.
This is lowercase L libertarian.
Alright, whatever. Keep going.
I'm doing a cluster here.
Okay, clustering.